Hey guys, tonight we descend into the archives of an abandoned Victorian asylum, one where time doesn't pass so much as it twists. The air is heavy with mildew and soot, and even the smallest sounds seem to echo endlessly down the crumbling corridors. Here, among the moldy patient records and rusted instruments, I found something I was never meant to see. And once I opened it, it started seeing me. This story isn't just about madness. It's about a boundary so thin between self and other, past and present, that once crossed, you probably won't escape this version of yourself ever again. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, what time it is, and what truly unsettles you. Now extinguish the lights. Perhaps turn on some white noise to mask the sounds beyond your window. And let's descend into tonight's journey together. The asylum isn't on any official map anymore. I found it through a passing reference in a university library catalog. A single footnote citing West Elm Hospital for the Chronically Unrestful, ESD, 1857. A curious name. The microfiche had been improperly filed under maritime records. The building itself stands like a rotting tooth in the woods outside Wendersham, its black brick mottled by decades of rain and neglect. No signs, no fences, just vines strangling window panes and a whispery coldness clinging to the ivy-covered facade. I stepped through the buckled main doors expecting silence. But the place was alive with noise, the wet drip of decay, the creak of unseen doors swinging on airless hinges, and somewhere deeper within, pages turning. Slowly, deliberately, I came as a researcher. I left as something else. The first few rooms were the standard fare: collapsed ceilings, flaking wallpaper, broken furniture. But behind the main administrative wing, I found the archives. They were oddly well preserved. Hundreds of patient files, ledger books, staff rosters, all cataloged and stacked in perfect rows beneath a layer of green-gray dust. It was like the room had been forgotten even by the rot, and then I found it. A leather-bound journal wedged behind a rusted filing cabinet. No author, no markings on the cover, just a blood-darkened strap holding it closed, brittle as insect wings. When I undid the clasp, I felt the tiniest shift in pressure, like the room exhaled for the first time in a century. The entries began in 1861. Spidery ink, meticulous penmanship. The first few pages read like a daily log. Dr. Simon F. Holloway, head archivist, documenting his duties. Harmless things. Sorted patient 343 BTKS record under catatonic/non-verbal. Incinerated outdated death certificates. Moved volume 9 of the surgical register to cold storage. But then something changed. By page 11, the tone grew personal, panicked. April 17, patient records have begun rearranging themselves. Names I know appear in ink I did not write. Found a journal addressed to me in my own hand. I have never written these words. My name is beginning to look strange on paper, like it belongs to another. The further I read, the more the journal mirrored my surroundings. Dr. Holloway described rooms I had just walked through, down to the exact configuration of mold patches on the ceiling and the broken globe by the entryway. Things he couldn't possibly know unless he stood here today. But he wrote it over 150 years ago. April 22, the entries complete themselves. I wake to find new pages filled in describing dreams I have not yet had, conversations I've not yet spoken, my thoughts, not mine anymore. There was one line that chilled me so deeply I felt my fingers stiffen around the pages. If you are reading this, we are already sharing the same thought. A subtle creak. I turned. No one, just rows of archived patient photos staring blankly at nothing. I don't remember when I stopped reading and started writing in the journal. I just looked down and my hand was moving on its own. I wasn't alarmed at first. Maybe it was a trick of fatigue or muscle memory, but the words weren't mine. The archivist has returned. Ink remembers. Dust forgives nothing. My handwriting, not my thoughts. I tried to toss the journal back behind the cabinet, but it wouldn't leave my hand. My fingers locked. I had to pry them open. And even then, the book landed spine up, pages open like a mouth gasping mid-sentence. I left the archive that night in a blur, but something had changed. I started dreaming in black ink, lines and margins, as though my world had turned two-dimensional, confined to paper. In one dream, I watched myself sleep from a high shelf, pages fluttering around me like wings. In another, I was the journal, bound, waiting. 3 days later, I went back, not because I wanted to, because I felt incomplete, and that's when I noticed it. A new entry, still warm from ink. He returns at last. The space between mind and paper narrows. Soon, the archivist will be fully written. The handwriting was neither Holloway's nor mine. It was something else, erratic but confident. It knew what it was writing, and somehow so did I. I could predict each word before it formed, not in a psychic way, more like remembering a story I'd already read but forgot I'd written. Some researchers believe in a concept called the palimpsest soul. The idea that spirits can inscribe themselves onto places, things, even minds, overriding the living like old parchment scraped and rewritten. Most dismiss it as occult nonsense, but I think those people never held a pen that moved on its own. The deeper I read, the less time seemed to matter. The journal had entries from 1882, 1927, even 1999, always in different hands, but always referencing the same phenomenon, an archivist swallowed by his own work. It speaks through cellulose. It listens when you read aloud. The eyes in the walls are not for watching, they're for remembering. The journal didn't end. It just stopped mid-sentence on the final page. A blot of ink bled outward like a closing iris. I touched it and something blinked. The air was different when I stepped out of the archive that second time. Thick, wet, like the building was breathing through me, not around me. The daylight, what little filtered through the cracked windows, looked jaundiced and slow. My shadow followed a second too late, always just slightly behind, like it wasn't sure if it still belonged to me. I should have walked away. Should have burned the journal, sealed the archives, reported the whole thing. But the truth is I didn't want to, or maybe I couldn't. The feeling was like an itch beneath the skull, a whisper written just out of reach. I brought the journal home. That was the first real mistake. It sat on my desk like a loaded mousetrap. I didn't touch it for a full day, but I heard it. At night, faint rustling like dry paper shuffling just beyond the edge of sleep. Once at 3:17 a.m., I swear it sighed. By the second night, my reflection in the bedroom mirror began to falter. Not flicker, falter, like it paused too long before mimicking me. It blinked ahead of me, licked its lips when I hadn't. And when I stepped closer, the eyes weren't quite mine. I opened the journal again just to make sure I hadn't imagined the last entries. There were new pages. June 6, he brings the vessel home. Very good. The boundaries thin beautifully here. Noise covers what should not be heard. He does not notice the walls listening yet. I didn't write that. I know I didn't, but my pen was on the desk. My handwriting slightly skewed to the left, just like mine. I flipped back 3 pages and found something worse. My name written 7 times, each version more warped than the last, as though the name itself were rotting on the page. By the last entry, it was no longer in letters, just symbols. Loops and spirals like the sigils etched into asylum cell doors long ago to contain the loud-minded. A practice some fringe Victorian doctors once believed could bind madness in ink. Most dismiss that as quackery, but then again, most people have never watched their name forget how to be a name. The mirror was worse the next night. I woke up and it was facing me. Let me be clear. My bedroom mirror is mounted on the opposite wall from my bed, but it was facing me, right next to the mattress, propped up on a chair I didn't remember moving. The reflection was darker than the room itself. The figure it showed wasn't asleep. It was sitting up, journal in its lap, smiling faintly. When I lunged forward, the mirror fell backward, cracked. The journal was back on my desk, still open, still warm. The next day I stopped seeing people in full. Friends' faces blurred. Strangers on the street had mouths but no eyes. They all sounded like pages turning, that soft, rhythmic rustle like someone pacing back and forth in paper slippers. I started writing in the journal again, not consciously. I'd black out during coffee breaks or at stoplights and come to with fresh entries under my fingers. Some of them weren't even in English. One was in Latin, I think. Another in mirror script. All of them told the same story over and over. The archivist, the ink, the rewriting. He forgets to eat. He forgets to speak. He is almost ready to be kept. I should have stopped reading then, but there was 1 page left. Blank. The journal had stopped completing itself. It wanted me to do it. I could feel it, not in words, but in pressure, like gravity pulling my mind down through my fingers. I tried resisting. I stayed up 3 nights without sleep, hid the journal in the freezer, submerged it in salt water, buried it beneath the floorboards. Every time it came back to the desk, always dry, always open, always waiting. The final night I broke. I lit every candle I owned, sat at the desk, open to the blank page. And I wrote, not with my words, but with his. I see you now, I remember your face, we share the hand. The thoughts are not borrowed, they are offered. Finish the sentence and remain, or close the book and be forgotten. There is no in-between. I stared at the page for what felt like hours. The sentence was halfway done. The archivist awakens when the name is, and my hand lifted the pen. I don't remember the rest. I woke up in the asylum, not the ruins. The building was whole, vibrant in that dim, gaslit Victorian sort of way. Hallways stretched clean and straight. Walls were freshly painted. I could hear laughter, mad, high-pitched laughter from somewhere below. The journal was still in my lap, and I was wearing a staff uniform. A brass plate on the pocket, Dr. Simon F. Holloway, Archivist. Somewhere above me, I heard a voice reading aloud. My voice, but twisted, elongated, as though someone was impersonating me from inside a throat full of paper. I ran. Every hallway led back to the archive. The same rows of shelves, the same flickering lanterns. But now there were dozens of journals, hundreds, all leather-bound, all open, all writing themselves. Names I recognized, some mine, some not. One was yours. No, I'm not joking. It was your name, your full name, inked in fresh black on the first page. You were already 3 entries in. That's when I realized none of us find this journal, it finds us. And it writes until we forget that we were ever anything else. Until we become part of the binding. A voice behind the wall, an echo in the mirror. They say some stories write themselves. I now know some stories write you. Researchers still argue whether the mind creates patterns in the dark or simply sees what's always been there. But ask yourself, when was the last time you read something and felt it looking back? I'm writing this from a place I can't name anymore. Not quite Asylum, not quite Dream. The journal finished its sentence. The archivist awakens when the name is forgotten. And now, I don't remember mine, do you? The candles have long burned out. The ink dries in the cold. There's only the soft sound of turning pages somewhere just outside your peripheral vision. The asylum's walls crumble in the waking world, but in the quiet folds of thought and memory, it remains, waiting. The journals sit untouched in the dark, but not unwritten. They collect moments, glances, thoughts you didn't realize were no longer yours. The next time you forget why you walked into a room, remember this. Maybe you left something behind, or maybe something followed you in. Even now, perhaps there's a soft creak in your home you cannot place, or a mirror just slightly off-angle showing you not quite as you are. Ignore it if you like, but the archivist remembers, and ink never forgets. Next time you hold a book, watch closely. If it opens on its own, close it. If it writes on its own, don't read aloud. And whatever you do, don't finish the sentence. Good night, my lovely shadows. Rest well.